Good morning, everyone. It is truly my honor to be with each of you here today. When Jonathan Greenblatt asked if I would give keynote remarks this morning, I eagerly agreed because of the vital mission of your organization, the partnership that we have built in the Biden administration with Jonathan and his team, and the urgent issues that are facing our community today. Jonathan's vision and innovation are defining what it means to lead an organization dedicated to combating hate at home and around the world in these increasingly challenging times for all of us. As President Biden's Homeland Security Advisor, a West Wing role that was created just after 9/11, it's my job to deal with the threat to our homeland that anti-Semitism represents. But for me, it's also personal. My great-grandparents fled oppression in Eastern Europe to build a new life in America where they could practice their faith free of fear and seek opportunities denied to them in their homelands of origin because they were Jewish. Still, in America, my mother was chased home from elementary school in Omaha as a little Jewish girl. Her family moved west to seek a more open-minded and tolerant place. She met my father in high school in Los Angeles, where they subsequently married at Wilshire Boulevard Temple. At that time, my father was considering entry-level job offers from several law firms after completing Harvard Law School and a Supreme Court clerkship with Justice Frankfurter. One offer was from the most esteemed blue-chip firm in the community, which had no track record of making Jews partners. Another was from a firm established by Jewish leaders that welcomed young lawyers of Jewish faith into very successful practices. When my dad was trying to choose between the two, his peers at the Jewish firm reached out and implored him not to accept their offer, and instead to go to the place where he would blaze a new trail for others to follow. That story was told to me as I was growing up to emphasize the imperative to build bridges rather than walls to the greatest degree possible, to be integrated rather than segregated, to know the other, and to have the other know us across faiths and races. My father experienced anti-Semitic discrimination long into adulthood, but he chose repeatedly, just like with his choice of a law firm, to build bridges from the Jewish community to other groups confronting discrimination and hate, including the Black and Asian communities in Southern California and beyond. As Martin Luther King said, the ultimate tragedy is not the oppression and cruelty by the bad people, but the silence over that by the good people. Or, as we say in our faith, it is our obligation to do tikkun olam. We must use our lives to heal our broken world. And I take that responsibility very seriously, and I know you do too. That's why you're here. And every day, I see how what is broken seems even more jagged than it used to be. Ethnic and religious hatred is being normalized in our melting pot. Anti-Semitism is being normalized. It's more mainstream. It's out in the open. And most disturbingly, violence against Jews is being normalized in America. Jews are being targeted in our neighborhoods, our synagogues, our schools, our homes, and online. By whatever measure you choose to employ, we have not seen this level of hatred against Jews since Europe before the Second World War. For example, last month, the ADL's annual audit report said that 2022 represented a 34% increase in anti-Semitic incidents in the United States over the previous year, the highest number recorded by the ADL since it began tracking these incidents in 1979. We have been focused on these issues since day one of the Biden administration, when the president charged us with generating the country's first ever national strategy for countering domestic terrorism. Then, as a component of that broader effort, we embarked on developing the first national strategy to counter anti-Semitism specifically. We expect to complete this work by the end of May, and the White House Domestic Policy Council Director, my close colleague and friend Susan Rice, will speak more about the strategy later today as she and I are co-chairs of the effort. Among its many initiatives is the one that to me is the most urgently needed, and that is the restoration of safety for Jews in our country. That goal means working in partnership with you to address three pressing issues simultaneously. First, we must continue to improve the security of our synagogues and Jewish institutions. The Biden administration has already expanded security assistance for houses of worship and religious institutions. For example, increasing the funds to improve physical security of buildings from $180 million 2 years ago to $305 million today, and we have asked Congress again to increase these funds. We're also sharing more information with law enforcement and community allies, creating partnerships between and among them, and training our congregations to confront these threats. We saw how this work can make a literally vital difference in January of 2022 in Colleyville, Texas. You'll recall that a rabbi and 4 members of his congregation were taken hostage. Ahead of time, that synagogue had already mapped out its floor plan and submitted it to local officials and to the FBI. They'd installed security cameras so law enforcement could see what was happening in real time. As a result, they could move quickly to mount a rescue operation. And when there was an opportunity to escape, the hostages relied on their active shooter training to take decisive action and flee the building safely. Colleyville's then rabbi, Charlie Citron Walker, said after the hostage crisis, and I quote, "Over the years, my congregation and I have participated in multiple security courses from the Colleyville Police Department, the FBI, the Anti-Defamation League, the Secure Community Network. We are alive today because of that education." Second, we need to reduce the threat itself and decrease hate-driven violence and harassment. This brings me back to my father's lesson to build bridges within our communities that make it hard for hate to flourish. That was the administration's aim last year when the president convened the United We Stand Summit. The summit mobilized federal agencies in new and renewed ways. For example, the Justice Department has improved the reporting of hate crime incidents to address the problem of underreporting by victims, witnesses, and law enforcement agencies. Another takeaway from the summit is the benefit of community-based prevention efforts that see teachers, coaches, pastors, and many others working together to steer individuals away from hate and violence. Work that takes time and trust and seeing each other as human beings living in the same community wherever possible. And when these efforts are insufficient, we will rely on our law enforcement partners to prioritize the investigation and prosecution of those who harass, abuse, and harm Jews and Jewish communities. On this point, strong partnerships between the government and diverse community groups can have a real impact. Let me give you an example. Last November, the Community Security Initiative, a community-based security organization, detected a social media threat to, quote, shoot up a synagogue in New York City. They relied on their strong ties to law enforcement and reported the threat to the FBI and the NYPD, who quickly determined the threat was credible and identified 2 men as suspects. That information was shared widely with local authorities and houses of worship, which resulted in the swift apprehension of the 2 men after a local transit worker recognized them in Penn Station and alerted the police. The police arrested the suspects and found a handgun and a large capacity magazine in their possession. All this was possible because a community group had strong relationships in place with law enforcement. So whether you are working to strengthen ties within your community or helping us address harassment, abuse, and threats, it matters. You are making a difference in the fight to end anti-Semitism and protect our community. Third, while we enhance protections in the short term and expand prevention efforts to reduce the threat over time, we also need to address that creeping normalization of anti-Semitism in our everyday lives, especially through online media. That includes tackling the ways in which anti-Semitic and other hateful views circulate online and mix with conspiracy theories and disinformation that can lead some people to violence. We need to ensure that those who spread lies and conspiracy theories remain outside the mainstream. And we have to do this in a way that protects not just members of the Jewish faith, but members of all religious denominations. That is how we will build common cause against those who seek to divide us. That means speaking out forcefully and clearly when we encounter expressions of hatred for Jews and other community groups, which is something President Biden has done throughout his presidency and indeed throughout his career in public service. Hate speech should never go unchallenged. We as a federal government are taking a number of actions to address this. For example, the Departments of Commerce and Education are using model curricula and grant programs to help Americans learn to recognize online hate speech and reduce its spread. Through organizations like the Global Internet Forum to Counter Terrorism, we are sharing information with technology companies to ensure that they understand the threat of anti-Semitism and more effectively enforce their terms of service. This is critical given the algorithms that suck people into more and more sinister conversations that we know may lead to incitement of violence. And 2 years ago, after the prior administration had refused to join, we announced President Biden's decision to join the Christchurch Call, an international partnership among 56 governments and 10 technology companies, including Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, to develop new solutions to eliminating terrorist content online while safeguarding freedom of expression. Let me give you an example of how this works in real time. When the perpetrator of the horrific Buffalo supermarket murders last May tried to live stream his racist attack, the Christchurch Call and the Global Internet Forum worked swiftly to terminate the live stream. Then they ensured it was neither posted online nor shared widely, which meant the content was far less widely circulated than we have seen in prior attacks, diminishing the prospects of incitement, of motivation by example, or copycatting. We know that we need to go much further than this, and we're now working with Congress to do that. As the President called for earlier this year, we're looking to Congress to reform the laws to ensure that technology companies are responsible for the malign content they spread and the algorithms that they use. As all these examples illustrate, we cannot do this alone. We in government will do everything we can to improve the safety of Jews and other religions, races, and ethnic groups who face threats and discrimination. But we need to do this work with you. We need the public to understand anti-Semitism and rally against it in all its forms, while standing shoulder to shoulder with other communities who are being targeted by hate. We need community groups, law enforcement, schools, houses of worship, businesses, and others to work together to rally against hate and to use all of their tools to prevent hate-driven violence. We need leaders at the local and state level to join us in speaking out and condemning anti-Semitism and hate wherever it arises. And we need the Anti-Defamation League, whether it's the ADL's combat plan to fight anti-Semitism in our communities, your repair plan to address online hate, or many of your other remarkable initiatives. We share the ADL's comprehensive approach to end the defamation of the Jewish people and to secure justice and fair treatment for all. coming back to the lessons that I learned from my family's experience, fleeing hate and violence, starting new lives in a new land, making their way despite skepticism and sometimes outright hostility, and always looking for ways to lift up others and heal the world, I would leave you with this final thought. Let us turn understandable fear into empowering action. Rabbi Mark Katz of Temple Nor Tamid in Bloomfield, New Jersey, recently put this best when he wrote that, quote, "There will always be bad actors, hateful people, bad agents, but they need not derail our lives. Every triumph, no matter how small, takes up the room in our psyche that was once full of our anxieties. We need to ask not what will happen tomorrow, but what we can do today. Then, when tomorrow comes, we arrive realizing we have been so busy fixing our broken world that we had no time to be afraid." Thank you for allowing me to join you this morning, and I look forward to doing Tikkun Olam together with you in the days and months and years ahead.